Despite the many flaws, Warhammer 3 continues to be the most played Total War game on Steam at pretty much any time, even being in the 50s of all games on Steam at the time of writing. With all those players, there are for sure plenty of things to enjoy, but there's also a lot to hate. Today we're going to count down the top 10 things that Warhammer 3 players hate, and just to get a few obvious ones out of the way before we get into the list: creative assembly, the price of everything, every single patch breaking every single thing in the game, and of course, me. Coming in at number 10, we have armies using the power of running away. This is one that I think we can all relate to. Picture this: you're at war with a faction and spot one of their armies within range of one of yours. You move in to attack them and they retreat just out of your range, but next turn, they're yours. The next turn comes around and they've used force march to get even further away from you. You continue marching after them, but it's no use. You just keep making the same size gap every single time, leaving you with their foul stench in their nostrils, but not a lick of flavour reaching your lips. That metaphor got away from me a little bit, but it's happened to all of us. They just continue running away from you for turns at a time, and there's not really much you can do to stop it. Some heroes can restrict enemy movement, but again, you have to catch them first, and when they're force marching to the max of their range every single turn, it quickly becomes a pointless effort. It's especially bad when it's a faction that doesn't need settlements. If they do need settlements, then you can just take out all their settlements so they have no choice but to fight or be knocked out. But if it's someone like the Beastmen, good luck, because they can run away from you all day, no problem. Coming in 9th, we have confederations to stay in the game. This one is especially annoying, seen as it's 10 times harder to confederate in 3 for the player than it was in 2. It's mainly the Empire and especially Carl that tends to pull this one off. You're fighting him, things are going well, you've got him down to the last few settlements and only a single army, but next turn somehow he convinced one of the other Empire factions to confederate with him, giving him a bunch more lands as well as some new armies. That war that you were within spitting distance of ending is now going to go on for far longer than it should. And even if you get him back to where he was, as long as there's more Empire factions on the map, you can bet your ass he's going to do the same thing to them over and over and over again, turning it into an eternal war where the only winner is your therapist. Next up, we have pointless diplomacy offers. Now this one isn't so bad, but it is really annoying and can be a whole lot worse in the late game when turn timers tend to take a lot longer. You hit and turn and watch as the AI makes their moves, only for everything to pause so a faction with 1 settlement and 2 units can ask you for 500 gold for no reason. You obviously refuse to get on with your game, only for the same offer to pop up in a few turns. Whether it's begging for gold, asking for alliances or war joins, it's always something stupid that benefits you in no way and is going to be an obvious no, and yet you have to review it and decline it every single time. In the later game when the turn timer can take a few minutes, some of us might like to get up after hitting their turn to go pee, get a snack or whatever you want to do. You expect to come back and you're ready to take your turn, but a faction has sent you an offer and held up everything only to be very obviously declined. Now you have to sit and look at the turn go by like some sort of peasant. If only you could just mute trades from certain factions, there's been nothing to worry about. But as it is, it's incredibly annoying. Next up, we have the advantageous retreat. This one is kind of a combo since it can apply both to campaign and to battle. Battle first, since I'm sure we've all seen this one many times before. You defend the settlement and manage to break an enemy unit that's attacking you, and they start retreating. But do they go to leave the map or run backwards towards their lord? No, instead they figure the best escape route is into the settlement where they'll no doubt rally and then be in prime position to go and capture a point or flank some of your troops. You also can't really afford to chase them down whilst also defending yourself, so there's not really much you can do to stop it. I seriously don't understand why it's so hard to mark an area as retreat for defenders and another for retreat for attackers. It's been in every Total War game I can remember playing, and in the early access for Pharaoh, it's there too. Anyway, moving on to the campaign side, say an enemy army is attacking your settlement and you bring an army to back it up, causing them to retreat. Do they retreat towards their own lands for relative safety, or do they instead retreat deeper into your lands where you can only get to them in a turn, giving them a massive positional advantage in their next turn? Of course, 90% of the time, it's option B, even when the settlement in question is a great bastion on a supposedly impenetrable wall. I know on a map this large, it's going to be wonky. But how on earth is that retreat when it literally takes them deeper into hostile lands? Yeah, it's a little known fact actually that on D-Day the Allied forces were ordered to retreat, but got their pathing confused, so just walked deeper into enemy territory, resulting in a major victory by total accident. Both of these are pretty inexcusable and severely annoying whenever they pop up, and they always do. Coming in 6th place, we've got Just As It Was Going So Well. Now this one is hard to put into a title, but what it really boils down to is the AI knowing certain things they have no way of knowing, and using that knowledge to irritate you to no end. For example, say you have a settlement and it's ready for a new building or some building upgrades. Sure, enemies are semi-nearby, but they haven't attacked it yet, so you should be fine to go ahead and queue up 1, 2, or even 3 new buildings in that settlement. You're even building walls, so it'll be safer in the end. Well, too bad for you, the AI now somehow knows you've just sank several thousand gold into that settlement, and they're somehow right there to attack, sack, raise, and/or occupy that settlement, meaning all of your cash is gone and any progress on that settlement might as well have never happened. It's frustrating to no end, especially if the enemy army dies right next turn, meaning they just wasted their their entire existence to piss you off. Call it save scumming all you want, but when this happens to me, I'm loading my last save and cancelling my build queue to get that gold back. If you don't have a mountain to sit on, you may never financially recover. So why live in the agony of defeat when you can simply make it so it never happened? Coming in 5th place, we have the anti-player bias. Now, this problem has only got worse in Warhammer 3, as it really feels like every AI in the game is programmed to attack you and only you. While this is annoying at all stages of the game, it's particularly painful early on when 2 factions on either side of your lands decide it's time to take you out. You then have to spend your early turns basically putting out fires as you get attacked on both sides and struggle to fight them back with the one army you can afford at the time. The moment you retreat from one side to defend the other, a new wave of enemies will throw themselves against your walls all over again. Okay, so you push them back and retake your lands, and what's that? Enemies from the opposite side are back. Campaigns like this feel like they're going nowhere. Mostly because they are, and honestly it just makes you want to close the game and go play some Vampire Survivors to cool off, or even go outside and touch some of the forbidden grass. Coming in 4th place we have, and it's gone. This one is pretty similar to a previous entry, but it's different enough to get a mention of its own. So you're in the later game and it's time to make yourself an end game army. You have all the recruitment buildings you can want and have sat a lord in your land for turns on end, literally burning gold to make the best of the best. You take 2 steps out into enemy lands, only to be caught out by a stack of 55 enemy armies challenging you to a battle you can never win, meaning the army you worked so hard to build is gone in seconds. All of that time and gold turned to dust in the blink of an eye. It's especially painful if you have some lords or heroes that are one battle away from immortality, meaning you really are sent back to square one. This is another situation where loading the last save is a foregone conclusion for me. No way am I sitting through all of those turns and burning all that gold again, only for it to happen once I'm done. Give me my army back and I'll send it on a press tour around my lands rather than send it to its doom all over again. Coming in 3rd place, we have quote-unquote randomly moving spells. There's a bunch of these in-game and I'm sure we've all seen them and a big blob of enemies, only to get a big dose of neuron activation. We drop the cast and not only does it move straight out of that enemy blob, it also quote-unquote randomly moves directly towards your own units, taking more of them out in the process than it could ever hope to with enemies. This one has layers of agony, so let's rattle them off. Not only have you hit a bunch of your own troops and made the rest of that battle that much harder to win, not only have you not dealt as much damage to enemies as you would have liked, but you've also essentially wasted winds of magic that are almost always pretty limited for the pleasure of doing so. And these spells, they never come cheap. Spells are almost always a risk as they can be dodged, or just not land right, but these in particular feel like hitting up a dodgy casino. You lose all that you invest and end up getting beaten up in a dark alley for your troubles. I flat out refuse to use these spells unless the blob of enemy units is unspeakably large. I'd rather spam Amber Spear to get the dub, rather than trust my precious wins to something that's almost guaranteed to screw myself over. Coming in 2nd place we have, you're not affiliated with me. In a game called Total War, it's no surprise that war declarations are tossed around like coins towards witches, but sometimes you can find yourself in a period of peace, and what a time it is. You make friends, and before you know it, you're in a defensive alliance or even military alliance, trying to work up the courage to pop the big Confederation question, when all of a sudden every other faction on Earth decides to become your enemy all at once. They either decide to declare war on your ally, or your ally decides to declare war on them, meaning you're dragged by the ear into a conflict that you'd honestly rather break up than get involved with, but don't want that staying on your reputation. You can be best buds with everyone, but for some reason, once you get too close to another faction, everyone gets jealous and feels the need to break you up by force. There's a reason basically everyone tells you never to get military alliances, as they just rope you into wars that you could really live without. And coming in 1st place, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone, it's moving ambush battles. I think everyone can agree with me that seeing an enemy army literally walk up to you on the map, and once it hits, suddenly you're being ambushed, you didn't see it coming. It's quite possibly the worst feeling in the game. Now I'm not talking about regular ambush battles, where you walk into a trap that you didn't see coming. No, this is when you can literally see what is normally a Skaven army marching towards yours, only for it to suddenly be an ambush that you didn't see coming once they make contact. Game, do you know what ambush means? A surprise attack by people lying in wait in a concealed position. Those lying in wait and concealed parts are kinda crucial. So now, instead of a head-to-head battle where you might have a chance at winning, you instead have to sit through this frustrating cutscene only to gain control of your army once the enemy is already upon you. It's especially bad if you're playing with a ranged or especially artillery-focused army, as you have no chance of getting them to a safe location before they're torn to pieces. It's painful when you stumble into an ambush, but having one walk right up to you in full view is just insulting, and I know that I, for one, hate it every single time. And that's our list. If you have any changes that you'd make, leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want to know what the best factions are, like, subscribe, and if you want to know what the very best mechanics in Warhammer 3 are, then check out this video here to see just how overpowered they can get.